It sounds like a Dragon Ball Z arc that I somehow missed like in high school. I'm like, was I driver's ed when that was on TV on Cartoon Network, or was it just not? They didn't bring that one to America. I don't know. So Cell Force, folks. Yeah. Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEVs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior editor at InsideEVs. On this week's show, one major automaker is shelving an autonomous driving program, but is that really a good idea right now? Plus, Porsche has canceled its plans to make EV batteries in-house. And stick around for Patrick's conversation with David Undercoffler, head of consumer insights at CarGurus. David is full of great advice for anybody shopping for a car right now. And even if you're not in the market, this is a really interesting chat about just the state of the car market in general and where it's going. But first, Patrick, you were just in London. How was that?
I was indeed in London, Tim. I had a great time over there. I was in the United Kingdom to drive the Polestar 5, their new sort of Porsche Taycan fighting sports sedan that they have. I'd love to tell you about it. All my driving impressions are embargoed. It was good. I liked it a lot. But more to come on InsideEVs in the coming weeks. But this was actually my first trip to the United Kingdom ever.
No way.
Yeah, really. I've been to South Korea twice, but never to England, which is where like all of my genetic peoples are from, supposedly. So I figured I was due a pilgrimage to the motherland, and I decided to stretch my trip a little bit and left like Monday because otherwise I would have been only in the UK for 36 hours and only in Milton Keynes. And like no offense to anyone who lives in or is from or like loves Milton Keynes, but like if I wanted like that outlet mall vibe, I would go hang out in New Jersey, and that's a lot closer. So I was like, well, screw this. I got to go to London while I'm here, and I stayed through the weekend, and my wife flew out too, and we had a great time. It was a really really awesome visit to one of the greatest cities in the world.
That is a good description, because I was like, Milton Keynes, I have no idea what that's like, but the
Yeah.
New Jersey of London, that I can understand. How was the city? How'd you like it?
It was great. It's a lot like New York, except everything kind of runs like a little bit or a lot better in a lot of ways. I think the world owes the Brits an apology. All those jokes that like I grew up hearing about like their food. Like I had excellent food while I was there. I ate in a lot of pubs. I ate more fish and chips than like a person should eat. I drank well when I was there too. Great country for that, let me tell you. But it was a great trip, and like the at least certainly in London, like the Brits are really ahead of us when it comes to electrification. I mean, they're kind of kicking our ass there, I found.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's great. But I also did just learn recently that people in the UK, they don't rinse their dishes when they wash them. They just leave the suds on and let them dry. So kicking our ass electrification, maybe, but I think that's unforgivable.
I didn't witness this, and like
Did you
I don't
taste
know.
it?
No, and like I don't know where you're getting your information, but I feel like that's you would just like soap the dishes but then not rinse them with water. So there's just like I don't know. That doesn't
That's
seem like it adds up to me.
that
Yeah.
is literally what they do. If I'm wrong about this, maybe our European listeners can chime in the comments. Let me know.
Did they do this during the Blitz or something when they were water rationing? Like that's the only explanation
Yes,
I
it's
could come up
deeply
with.
ingrained in the British culture. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
eating
Okay.
soap.
Well, according to Tim Levin, anyway, who's from New York and lives in the Bay Area, so we'll see. But anyway, no. Back on topic. Like they were doing really well at EV stuff in London, which was great. Like, I was really impressed by what I saw. The stats I looked up is that EV adoption in the United Kingdom was around 20% last year, so a little higher than double what we did in 2024 in terms of new EV sales. If you see a new car in London, like back in napkin math, I'm guessing it's something like 30, maybe 40-ish% of new cars seem to be all electric. And you see them everywhere. And like they have lots of curbside level 2 charging,
Mm,
hybrid buses everywhere, electric garbage trucks even. Like it was like kind of everywhere you looked. Like there were still old school gas cars, but the city of London has restrictions on like where gas cars can go, and it's going to be stepping those up over time. So it kind of behooves people who drive there to go electric. I've never seen that many Mercedes EQS or EQEs in my life ever. I was like, okay, oh, that's where they all went. It's this place. And I've been told by a few friends, including InsideEVs contributor and former podcast host, actually, Alex Goy. He was like, London's a little bit more advanced than like the rest of the country, but you're good on you, London. It was cool to see that. It feels like 5 years ahead of like where America like would have been if Trump hadn't been elected. So
Probably.
where that leaves us now, I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like the Bay Area to me. I mean, like I see, honestly, I see electric school, but like yellow school buses taking kids around, and a fully electric, city buses and stuff. So we have a lot of that too, except for I think the place that they seem to really be beating the Bay is this curbside level 2 everywhere, which is something that barely exists in America. And San Francisco just installed like its first one ever. So Europe's way ahead on that.
Yeah, they've really got that dialed in. And I walked up to a lot of places where they had like lamppost EV charging. Like I saw that really frequently there, and like the little like ports. Like in a lot of these charging situations, you bring your own plug and plug it into the port that's there. Then some of them also had the plug you could pull out on your own. But like a lot of lamppost stuff, and it was just cool to see that. And I was like, someone who's in New York City a lot and used to live there, I'm like, okay, there's things I wish we were doing here that the Brits are doing well. And also, I saw one of those new electric Renault 5s, which like
that thing is so cool.
They're so cool, and like they've been getting like glowing reviews. Like Andre Nadelia on our team in Romania, he like loved it. Jeremy Clarkson over the summer, like infamous EV hater, was like, it's like, I hate electric cars, but like I actually really like this thing, and I'm glad it's as good as it is and not from China. Like he was very full of praise for that. So I don't know, it was neat to see that too. So good stuff happening in Europe right now, but not so much here in America, right? On to our first story about just where our companies are at on dealing with the future. Here at InsideEVs, we're as much a technology publication as we are an automotive one, because those two fields are dovetailing in so many ways. And just last week on this podcast, you heard from Rivian's CEO, RJ Scaringe, who said it blows his mind that so many automakers are walking away from EV and electrification initiatives just because America's like killing off the EV tax credit and backing off on fuel economy rules. And one of the big ones that's doing that is Stellantis, a French private equity company. No, I'm kidding. It's not that at all. It's this giant conglomerate that owns like Jeep and Ram and Dodge, and like they didn't waste a second to openly announce that they're, quote, flexing hard to go back to ICE engines and the Hemi V8. So they're didn't really want to do EVs, and now thank God they don't have to.
Mm-hmm. But at least they're moving forward on autonomous vehicles, right?
That's going to be a no there, Tim. This week, Reuters reported that Stellantis is halting its first ever Level 3 driver assistance program because of, quote, high costs, technological challenges, and concerns about consumer appetite. Really good scoop from Reuters there, by the way. And just to set the table a bit, when we talk about Level 3 autonomy or Level 3 ADAS, we mean hands off the steering wheel, eyes off the road, while the car basically drives itself. However, you still need to be ready to take over in a moment's notice if the car tells you to or something goes wrong, which is, I don't know, sounds great in theory, but also it is terrifying. Like you're sitting there just like, texting, you're on the gram, you're on the apps with somebody, and the car's like, oh no, you need to like take over right now. And it's just throw your phone out the window and grab the wheel or something like that. But yeah,
it is that kind of weird gray area between like cruise control and fully autonomous. You never have to pay attention. It's kind of like right in the middle of that.
Right.
And for context, so in February, Stellantis unveiled what it calls AutoDrive. Great name. Its first in-house developed driver assistance technology. And it said at the time that hands-off, eyes-off capability was ready for its vehicles. And that would have been a really huge deal. Almost no car company does that. Most of them, including Tesla, are all eyes on, right? Almost every car you buy, even the most advanced driver assistance, like it still requires you to basically be in control at all times. So eyes off is a big deal.
The only one that isn't is from Mercedes-Benz, and it's called Drive Pilot, and it's on certain S-Class and EQS models. And nobody's heard of this because it's really strict in how they do it. It's only available in California and parts of Nevada, only on major freeways, only in the daytime, only when the weather's good, only on like the fourth Tuesday of every month, except if that falls on a major holiday. No, I'm kidding, but like it's really tepid how Mercedes has rolled this out. And like I did a story on this last year. It's like they're kind of a leader in autonomy, but like nobody knows it because they've been so cautious here. And as you mentioned, Tim, like that goes further than like what General Motors, Super Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise, or even Tesla's Autopilot can do. So we're talking beyond that now.
Yeah, and all these companies have said like they, the ultimate goal for them is to move past level 2 driver assistance, where you have your hands on the wheel, hands on or off the rail, but eyes on the road, and move toward like higher levels of autonomy. And that's what Stellantis was trying to do here. So earlier this year, when they announced this auto drive, they said that it enables automated driving at speeds of up to 37 miles per hour. And they said that would go up over time. And they said it's ideal for commuters in dense urban areas. It will allow drivers to temporarily engage in non-driving tasks, such as watching a movie, catching up on emails, reading a book, or simply looking out the window. And that sounds like something that a lot of people would really want, actually, right? Like, I mean, thankfully, I don't have a commute like that, but if you have a 30-minute or like an hour commute each way to work, and you're on the highway, like, who wouldn't pay a little extra for something like that, where you can like check emails or, watch Netflix or whatever?
Yeah. I'm pretty much these days, like in a press car, even my Kia, like I'm always putting on like the low speed traffic jam assist control. Like more and more cars do that because it's pretty low stakes, right? Like take your foot off the brake, keeps you in the lane, it goes at low speeds, and you can mind the road, obviously, but you can kind of do other stuff too. But like being in a traffic jam sucks. It's not great no matter what you're in, and it's annoying, it's frustrating, it's a horrible waste of time. So like, yeah, I think everybody would agree that this is a good application for things. So Stellantis was trying to fix that, and now nope. According to Reuters here, this is from a Stellantis spokesperson, what was unveiled in February 2025, 6 months ago, by the way, was level 3 technology for which there is currently limited market demand. So this has not been launched, but the technology is available and ready to be deployed. However, the sources said that, who spoke to Reuters, said that actually this program has been put on ice. It is not expected to be deployed. And when asked how much time and money was lost on the initiative, Stellantis would not say. I bet not. They did say that the work done on auto drive so far would support future versions of autonomy, which I do believe. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer here.
Yeah, Stellantis said it's going to rely on AI Motive, a tech startup that it acquired in 2022 to deliver the next generation of the auto drive program. And it declined to tell Reuters when that would be ready and whether it will include level 3 capability. So this whole level 3 thing from Stellantis, at least according to Reuters, seems to be pretty up in the air. Patrick, what's your take on this? Like, is this a good decision by Stellantis?
It's important to remember the context that Stellantis is making this decision in. This huge international conglomerate of American and European car brands was formed with the merger of PSA, Peugeot, Citroën, and Fiat Chrysler a few years ago. And it was created on the idea that scale, that having all these brands together, able to pool resources, that they could create a system with lots of capital and flexibility to create the technologies of the future, like electrification and autonomy. Like that's why Stellantis exists. Well, it's everybody pooling their resources and working across international lines, for this like combined approach to the future. It hasn't gone that way. Sales and profits at Stellantis have been sinking to the tune of double digits since the beginning of last year. The stock price is also down. The CEO was just unceremoniously ousted last year. And all that's driven by issues like really high new car prices. Like the average price of a new Jeep in America is somehow around $60,000. A kind of aging and lackluster product lineup. For as big as Stellantis was or is, it was often accused of like not paying enough product attention to like its most important and profitable brands like Ram or Jeep in America, while kind of the smaller European ones got all the love. Plus tariffs, plus operational problems, and now they have a new CEO who came from Jeep. I've interviewed him before, Antonio Filosa. He seems like a pretty sharp guy, but he's got like a lot of problems to fix. So this is like not a great time cost-wise for Stellantis to invest heavily in autonomous cars. And one analyst who spoke to Reuters here even said it's a high investment for high risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you think of it short term. However, like we know that at a certain point, every car company is going to be offering something like this, and kicking that can down the road probably is not the best move.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Like Stellantis has been having a really tough time. It lost $2.7 billion in the first half of this year.
The first half of this year?
Yeah. And, it's kicking the can down the road with autonomy, and it's also not doing that well with EVs. Like it has not been an early mover on EVs. The Dodge Charger EV, which is their, electric muscle car, has been poorly received. Sales not doing so well. The Jeep Wagoneer S, which is Jeep's first EV in America, also pretty underwhelming. And you talked about how they've been accused of like letting some of these American brands sort of decay and not giving them new products. And like, look at Chrysler, Chrysler sells one model in America, and it's the Pacifica minivan, which like people love, and people actually love the plug-in hybrid version of it. But when you talk about electrification, they've been showing off the same concept cars for like years now, and they just paused an electric SUV that was supposed to come next year. So the whole EV thing for them is just moving very slowly.
Also, that damn minivan at Chrysler, that thing's been around like what since like a little after the bailouts. Like that, you gotta give the Pacifica its flowers, man. That thing is put in the work. It is just this old workhouse vehicle, and it's just dragging the rest of Stellantis along with it. Like it's like I thought I was out. They keep pulling me back in, man. They even had a concept car, like an off-road concept car with the Pacifica. And I was like, really? Like that's what you're doing here? Like just let that thing have a nice retirement. It's earned it at this point. But yeah, okay. So Stellantis, right? Like it's not doing great on electrification. It's not moving forward much on autonomy. So like, what is this company good at besides lighting money on fire? And I think that's the question that has to be answered. When I think about like big legacy dinosaur auto, like that's not pulling this off, like I'm gonna be blunt and say like I think of them. I think of like Nissan and Jaguar maybe and a couple others. Like this is like the poster children for like not getting the future right. And we still call the three American automakers the big three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. And that's not really true anymore, I guess, but like look at the other two. Like Ford is doing really well with Blue Cruise. It was an early leader to EVs. It's had a lot of stumbles lately, but like it's got a cool new program with the electric truck coming out that's going to be more affordable. The people I've talked to, they're very impressive. It sounds like it has legs, and like General Motors is doing a spectacular job in this world. It's rolling out new EVs all the time. It's becoming this huge supplier of batteries. Like Super Cruise's success speaks for itself. It's okay. So like that's what the big two or others are doing. So like, where's the big third? Okay, like more Hemi V8s and like super expensive Jeeps and nothing that meets the future, right? Like what is the point? And I just like, last thing I'll say is like, I'm not one of these people. It's like all cars need to come without steering wheels one day. Like I'm not one of those freaks. Like I actually like driving a lot, but like the issue that I have is with Stellantis saying that like there's currently limited market demand for these kinds of features, right? I mean, that's not what we've seen.
Right. Yeah. We even talked about it a few weeks ago on the podcast. There was this one study from this market research group, that Auto Pacific, and they said that I think it was hands off, eyes on driving on the highway was the most requested, most in demand car feature in America right now among new car buyers. So like, yeah, the idea that there's limited demand, maybe I'm not seeing the data that Stellantis is seeing, right? But the idea that if you went out there and told people, hey, we'll let you text while you drive, or we'll let you read a book while you drive, I think there would be a lot of demand for that kind of level 3 capability.
Yeah, and you've driven a bunch of those autonomous systems, or I'm sorry, autonomous automated driver assistance systems, I should say. So we're always careful with the wording because there are no fully autonomous cars that you can buy in America today, despite what Elon Musk might tell you. So we're careful with that phrasing. But like Tim, you've used a lot of those systems, like I have, like Super Cruise, and Blue Cruise over at Ford. I mean, what's been your experience using those?
Like I was saying, I think you don't realize how fatigued you can get just driving on the highway, kind of doing nothing until you use one of these systems and it kind of does a lot of the work for you. And then you get out of the car and you're like, oh, pretty rested. Like I didn't have to do all the lane changes and do all the accelerating and decelerating. So I think more and more people are going to recognize that these kinds of systems like Super Cruise and Blue Cruise and whatever comes out of Stellantis in the future are the real deal and are worth like paying for.
It is a feature that people want, and it is useful. And it took me a long time to come around to that as somebody who's been very skeptical of autonomy. I mean, like I covered like the early days of autopilot and like what happened with Uber and everything. It was like, wow, some of that stuff was nightmarish. And it's like, okay, finally 10 years in, like we're getting this stuff a lot more dialed in. But Ford just put out some data on Blue Cruise. And they said that in 2024, more than 70% of Blue Cruise trips that were taken were under 20 minutes, like a daily commute. But when customers had longer trips, anything over an hour, they were using Blue Cruise 50% of the time, half the time. So like, yeah, even these own companies are showing that like people want and use these features. So I don't know. I get the financial rationale for this from Stellantis, but it's a real, it shows that this company isn't super meeting the future. And I guess the last thing I'll say is like, we gave RJ at Rivian a lot of bandwidth last week. And like one thing I have been thinking about is like, okay, it's easy for you to opine about the future because like your company's been burning startup cash since always, and you've never turned a profit. And like Ford, GM, Stellantis, like they have shareholders to answer to now. They have to be profitable and keep the lights on now. So it is a bit of a double standard there. However, what he says about, electrification and autonomy sort of converging to create a superior product over time, like I do agree with that thesis. And I do think that's the way it's going to go long term. And like the companies that aren't investing in that stuff now are really going to be cooked later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree with that. So on the same topic, on a similar topic, another automaker pumping the brakes on some future plans is Porsche. Porsche announced this week that it has scrapped plans to manufacture its own high-performance EV batteries in-house. So why this change in strategy? It sounds like a pretty big shift. Porsche said it's facing, quote, challenging conditions in both the U.S. and China, plus a shifting policy environment in the U.S., which is its biggest market for sales.
Yeah, we don't need to remind you of what's happening on either front because none of it's great for companies like Porsche. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've got, the rollback of EPA fuel economy rules. We've got the rollback of all these different tax credits that were subsidizing EV sales. And above all, Porsche said that EV demand globally just isn't taking off like it had expected when it first established its battery division called Cellforce, which is another really sick name. I'm like kind of bummed that I'd never heard of this before.
Yeah. It kind of rules, honestly. Yeah, Cellforce.
Yeah,
like,
so it said
I I had never heard that name until today, which I guess says a lot for somebody like covers this stuff for a living. But like it sounds like a Dragon Ball Z arc that I somehow missed like in high school. I'm like, was I Driver's Ed when that was on TV on Cartoon Network, or was it just not? They didn't bring that one to America. I don't know. So Cellforce, folks, yeah, badass.
Sounds it, yeah. So Porsche said that this basically the lack of scale that it sees for battery production means that this whole Cellforce project is, quote, not economically viable. Basically, they don't expect to sell enough EVs in the near future to make producing batteries in-house worth the cost. There were plans for at least 2 factories where they would build these batteries, and now that's off the table. That Cellforce division is basically being turned into an R&D arm of Porsche, where they're just going to like tinker on new batteries instead of actually like producing them at scale.
Yeah, this reminds me of how just Volkswagen Group's strategy for future tech in general has evolved a lot. Like, doing a huge in-house software arm that just was plagued with problems, and now they're kind of handing the keys over to Rivian a little bit to figure that out. Mm-hmm. I asked Suvrat Kotari on InsideEVs. He's our battery technology reporter. He's been on the podcast as a guest and as a co-host many times, what he thought of this. And he says, I didn't really understand why Porsche had its own in-house battery cell arm, and also Volkswagen had one too, called PowerCo. So PowerCo mm-hmm. and Cellforce. Again, it sounds like Dragon Ball Z to me. It rules. But as a part of the Volkswagen Group conglomerate, like Porsche, it's like it was a little odd and perhaps overly ambitious for it to expect to have its own in-house batteries, right? And I do think Porsche deserves some credit here. I don't think it should be spoken of in the same breath as like Stellantis above. It was one of the first out of the gate with modern EVs, like the Taycan, which is spectacular. It's one of our mm-hmm. favorite cars. It has the Macan Electric now, which is very good. It took, the top selling Macan, made that all EV. It's got the Cayenne Electric. So for other problems, like they're actually doing really well on the tech front, and great EVs are one thing, as you know, and like, but making freaking batteries is a whole other thing. Like I'm not shocked that this one Volkswagen Group looked at this and was like, yeah, you know what, this doesn't make sense for us. It's too much of a lift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some context is like a lot of companies, a lot of automakers in this kind of electric era have been looking to get more vertically integrated, right? Kind of like Tesla does, and like the Chinese automakers like BYD are. BYD started out as a battery company, so it makes its own batteries and puts those in its cars. And so you've got a lot of automakers that are investing in battery companies. They're forming joint ventures. They're striking deals for minerals. Actually building them in-house, I think, is still pretty rare. Yeah. But the kind of undercurrent is like a slowdown in EV sales around the world, in the US specifically because of policy. We're not talking about EV sales dropping or going to zero, but like not growing as fast as everybody had thought. That is going to hit demand for batteries in like a major way, right? You just have like fewer EVs being produced, so you need fewer batteries. And so Porsche isn't the first to kind of scale back its efforts here. Volkswagen's PowerCo also decided that it was going to produce fewer batteries than it had first expected to. Ford is reportedly leasing out some of its battery production capacity to Nissan because apparently it thinks that it can't, use all that capacity. Last year, so GM has a joint venture with LG where they're building a bunch of battery plants to supply GM EVs. And last year, GM said that it would sell one of those battery plants to LG because it didn't need that capacity anymore.
When you were putting the notes together for this podcast, you used the word overplanned, which I think is a really good way to describe this situation. And like in fairness, like even before the policy shifts, air quotes, which is like my nice way of saying like Donald Trump happened. Like honestly, like this industry was kind of slowing down and dealing with these issues even in the Biden era, even in 2023, 2024. Like there was this huge planned battery boom, like you said, here and in Europe, and it was already kind of hitting the skids. So I think there is sort of a natural leveling off, but hard to peg that to EV growth. And I think that when we talk about the battery industry, like writ large, probably things like energy storage, especially for AI data centers, like that's probably going to drive that industry a lot more in the next few years. But we will still need great batteries. And again, this is not saying that Porsche is abandoning EVs. Far from it. It's just proof that in-house batteries are going to be a bigger lift than expected for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not even sure that like you need to do that if you're a car company, right? Like there are a lot of big battery manufacturers that would be happy that already have the scale, be happy to sell them to you. So maybe we'll see another Porsche battery effort in the future, but not working right now.
Yeah.
And now, here is Patrick's conversation with David Undercoffler, head of consumer insights at CarGurus and editor-in-chief at Autolist.
All right, well, one trend that always comes up with modern cars is affordability. When do these things get cheaper? Why are EVs so expensive? And how did all cars get so expensive? Well, today on the Plugged In podcast, we're joined by a special guest who's an expert on car buying economics. Please welcome Dave Undercoffler, the head of content at Autolist and head of consumer insights at CarGurus.com. Dave, thanks for joining us, man.
Patrick, great to be here. Good to see you again. Patrick and I go way back.
We do. We were journalists at different publications on the car beat in the 2010s. I'm not sure I've seen you since like before the pandemic. So it's I'm glad you made it through that.
Right. Well, as you pointed out in the pre-production, a lot more gray on both of us. So
yeah.
I'm glad you're joining me on this journey.
Yeah, when you work in media, it's just it's a casualty of being in the business.
It is.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you about like I said, car buying economics and the affordability of new cars, used cars, and electric vehicles too. And we're on the Plugged In podcast for InsideEVs, obviously. But for the purposes of this discussion, I think it behooves us to talk about like the car market in general, because there are some crazy trends no matter what powers these vehicles.
Yes.
I did want to bring one thing up before we dive into that, because as we record this, we're about 24 hours after Ford CEO Jim Farley went down to Kentucky and gave a big presentation about Ford's allegedly upcoming $30,000 electric truck and rethinking of the assembly line, which is a pretty interesting announcement. So what were your thoughts on all that?
You know, I thought it was great. It's good to hear some concrete plans by Ford and by Farley looking towards the future. I think it's like, okay, cool, great plan, go do it, go execute it. Hit that $30,000 price point, hit that timeline, right? Those things are always in flux when people talk about large companies or small companies talking about EV plans for the future. It seems like that dollar figure always goes higher and that timeline always goes later, or the range or the battery. So I think it's a good step by Ford. So like, all right, get out there and execute. I think as sort of maybe you were sort of nerded out on this too. As an auto industry observer, I was also sort of struck by the manufacturing element that he's talked about. You know, when you're not Tesla, it is harder for a company as dependent on labor and unions, the UAW, as Ford is, to come in and sort of make all these wholesale changes to the way these vehicles are manufactured and assembled and the number of people it takes to do that. So that will be interesting to see how he navigates that, wanting to cut costs of these EVs, but then also, he's got to keep labor happy in a way that, Tesla and Elon were never mindful of that or never needed to be. So there's a lot moving, a lot going on. It's like, all right, good luck. We'll be watching. We'll see what they do.
No, you bring up a lot of great points that I hadn't thought of yet on the labor and UAW angle, because like we're aiming this at competing with the Chinese automakers, and obviously they don't have the same kinds of concerns about labor costs that we do. But no, some great points here. But I think what's interesting about that whole thing was that the response from analysts and experts and like people in the industry was a little bit more muted and tepid than I expected it to be. Like, I think that tech is really cool. I love the idea, but I also think everybody's a little burned out on like big EV promises in 2025. Like, how many years do we hear all these car companies, we're going all electric by this date, and now it's like, well, what we mean is here's a new V8 coming out next year. It's like everyone's kind of like, sure. Like, do you think that's the case also?
Yeah, I mean, it did seem more muted. And I think part of it is just that Ford, the media today and consumers, we like sort of our juicy, sexy sound bites. And there wasn't like there was a shining product standing or sitting behind Jim Farley that was like, this is coming. It was more sort of abstract of like, we're going to come out with these vehicles. This is our manufacturing process. We're cutting these costs. This is our price goal. So like, I wonder if that was part of it. I think maybe people were sort of like I said, like, all right, cool. Call us when you've got the shiny thing to show us. Maybe that gets people, a little more jazzed up. This maybe was more of like a manufacturing pricing kind of, statement. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and like an image or concept of what this vehicle even is would have been
Right.
helpful,
Right. Like a little more tangible. I mean, they said what the truck is going to be a little bigger than the Maverick, but smaller than the Ranger. Do something. Do like a sheet over the silhouette of a vehicle. Just a little bit more product based. But like you've said, we've heard all these promises for years. I think scalable architecture, like cool. Volkswagen, how long have they been talking about that? Like,
yeah.
it was either nothing particularly new or nothing particularly sexy. So the media was like, all right, or the consumers like, cool.
Yeah.
Next.
But I think that what their announcement dovetails nicely into what we're going to talk about, and the eye-catching part of that headline is $30,000, which is these days like good luck finding a new car for 30 grand, right? That's a hell of a deal no matter what you end up in. So just, I mean, you deal with car sales and car buying trends a lot at Autolist and CarGurus. Like, what's your read on the car market these days in terms of pricing, new or used? Is now a good time to buy either?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how long do you have this week? I could spend 4 hours on the nuances of the car market right now. And
Yeah,
it's so,
long form podcast, baby. Let's do it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like the Acquired, right? Is that really long form? Okay, the short answer is this right now, and it's August 12th. This is actually a good time to buy a car, particularly in the new market. I would say if you are in the 6-month horizon of needing a new car or vehicle of any kind, act sooner rather than later, right? And so that's for a couple different reasons. One, prices have remained relatively stable for particularly new cars, right? We haven't seen automakers really respond to tariffs, but at the same time, they're respond to tariffs in the way of raising prices for consumers. They're getting right. The Wall Street Journal this week or last week said, global automakers have, I think it's cost them $12 billion so far, right? So they're feeling it. They just haven't passed that on to consumers. That's not going to last, right? We're seeing upward pressure, and there's a couple things causing that. One, I think, is what's interesting about the car market or the car industry. We have model years, right? So unlike other industries where it's harder to roll prices higher because of tariffs and kind of sneak that in, right? If you go to buy a washing machine this weekend and it's $800, and the next weekend that exact same washing machine is $850, the consumer's like, what the heck? What just happened? That's tariffs. You feel that. Automakers have not raised their prices because I think you go to buy a $50,000 SUV in May at one weekend, and the next weekend it's $53,000 because of tariffs. You're like, that's BS. But automakers have a kind of golden opportunity coming up, and that's the model year change. So if an SUV right now in 2025 is $50,000, and suddenly the model year 26 of that SUV, the exact same one, is $53,000, we are sort of conditioned to just expect there to be price increases model year over model year.
Because that happens all the time. Like there are always usually little step ups or sometimes big step ups when it goes from 2025 to 26, right?
So yes, exactly. So we are anticipating that automakers will kind of take that opportunity to sort of, they've got pent up costs because of tariffs. I would imagine as the 2026 models start rolling in, you're going to see those price increases. Like right now, I think it's only like 13% of listings on CarGurus are 2026 model years, or as of July. So it's still kind of early days. Those are not sort of cycling into the dealer lots yet, but that's sort of one of the main reasons I would say prices are going to start to go higher.
What if you're like a buyer who's thinking like, not my problem, losers. Like what I want to buy was built in America, and that could be like a gas Chevy Silverado, or it could be a Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is now made in Georgia. Like, do you think that that's going to be are customers going to see significant differences based on where these vehicles are built?
Well, great question. That's capitalism, baby. Is that, those prices will probably go up too, because if you're an automaker that has a product and you're looking at your competitors and your competitors are going up 5% because of tariffs, your price or your product is not going up 5%, but you're like, I can boost my margin right there and still be competitive with the rival of that vehicle. Yeah. Do that, right? Because then you get there's no downside. That's a sort of pure profit. And any automaker is still affected by tariffs one way or the other, right? Like there's no automaker that's completely insulated from building, that has entirely all their manufacturing, all their suppliers in the U.S. border. So everyone's getting hit, and they see that as an opportunity. Yeah, let me make up some margin on this vehicle that I'm losing on this. So no one's safe. No vehicle is safe, I would imagine.
Wait a second. You don't think car companies would lie to us, do you?
They're not lying. It's capitalism. Like I said, they've got investors, they've got a board, they've got, a C-suite of people. That's anyone who thinks that wouldn't happen. I hate to say it, you're probably a little naive. That's just the way it goes, man. I don't make the rules.
And this actually reflects the trends that we've seen over the last few years. I mean, like, when the hell did cars get so expensive? It feels like we went from, average new car price being like 30 to 35 grand pre-pandemic to about 50 ATP now. Like what on earth, right?
Oh, I feel like I hear my dad's voice echoing in my head of like, $50,000 for a car. Like, that's insane. Like, it does.
The cars are too expensive now.
Yeah, I still sort of like, as someone who's working in the industry like you for a decade plus, $50,000 is the average transaction price still kind of blows my mind. And so that's part of the problem, is that there is an affordability issue, right? There are many people cannot afford a $50,000 new car. So
totally.
And there's just all kinds of pricing issues or pressures. So then, maybe those people are going into the used market. Well, the used market right now is kind of interesting because prices are a little bit up year over year. But what's happening is the 3 and 4 year old used cars are not cycling into the used market like they traditionally do, because what was happening 3 or 4 years ago? We had the chip shortage. There were fewer new cars being sold. So you've got this sort of cyclical event happening that's then reducing supply of used cars, those prices are then going up. So there's like
a modern used car shortage, basically, because of pandemic shortages.
Yeah, right. Like if you're looking at like a 5 to 10 year old used car, things are better. But if you're one of these like CPO, you like your car, the depreciation's out the door, right? And it's still like a reasonably new model. Maybe it's the same body style that's sold new. It's tougher. It's more expensive because there's less supply right now.
One kind of beacon of hope we've reported on a lot at InsideEVs, both for just like people looking for a deal and for the electric market in general, is that like it does seem like the place to get a deal is a used EV right now, right?
Well, new and used, yes. I mean, it sort of depends on a couple of different things. But I mean, I'm out here in Los Angeles. I see on the new front, I see lease deals on like the Nissan Ariya, which I think personally I've driven. I think it's an underrated EV. I quite like them. I know the styling may not be for everyone.
Yeah, it's solid. It's a solid machine.
It's a good size. It's got decent range. It's got it's got the stuff. It's like $129 a month for a lease. Like my cell phone plan is more than that. Like there's like, that's a good deal. That's on the new side. But yes, on the used side too. I mean, we're seeing prices absolutely go down. I've got 2 little kids. I wish I had a high schooler that I needed a third car. I would run out and buy a cheap EV, right? Like that's just because you're getting a lot for your dollar. And particularly right now, we're still before September 30th. We're not having you're still eligible for a tax credit on used EVs, depending on your income and sort of some other metrics. But yeah, man, it's a great time to get a deal on a used EV.
We've got emails from readers who are like, I never considered an EV before. I didn't believe in it. I wasn't interested. Then it's like that. I found I could get like a couple-year-old Kia EV6 for 23 grand. Like, holy crap, this is great, and it's the best and only deal I could find. Like it seems like a few people are sort of waking up to the field like this way.
Yeah, and that's great. Like that's a great way to be sort of introduced to an electric vehicle. I'll say it's so pronounced that I just pulled up some data from CarGurus. Our data is showing the average list price of a used hybrid there's parity with the average used price of a used EV, right? Like on the new market, there's quite a bit of gap between those two pricings. But like right now, that just sort of shows you that sort of puts into relief the opportunity you have to get a good EV used for cheap. And there's also like I grew up with a bunch of unreliable cars, so I've had reliability like beaten into my priority for buying a vehicle. And I know there's you hear lots of noise about perhaps the screens are less reliable or people have issues with the screen, but do keep in mind, an EV, a used EV, it's not like a used internal combustion car. Like the number of problems that you are unable to see dramatically is smaller on an EV because there's practically no moving parts. So from like a peace of mind standpoint, yeah, I mean, an EV versus an ICE, sure, I love that. It costs
we've had that discussion lately. It's like, okay, let's say you're looking at a used Tesla, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's got 100,000 miles on it. Like a gas car with 100,000 miles on it, unless it's been meticulously maintained. Like that's been through some stuff. It's not perfect anymore. It's somewhere between like average and beat up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the EV, like if the battery's still solid, and we're seeing more and more, high mileage batteries, like really keeping their charge well. And, like the tires have been replaced or up to date, and the wipers are good, like the replaceable parts, like that doesn't really gonna drive like a 100,000 mile gas car, right? It kind of almost makes like mileage not matter as much.
Yeah, not nearly as much. I mean, it's always like you're hitting the near 100,000 mile, depending on the brand. Like you're looking at like timing belts or timing chains. You're looking at gaskets, all these like wearables that are pretty reasonably expensive to do. That's an expensive part, or there's a lot of labor involved to then sort of allow that car to continue to, sustain the next 75, 100,000 miles. And EVs, again, yeah, I mean, you're really just making sure it's bolted together properly. Yeah, there's an opportunity there.
Just as someone, I'm on our first EV in our family, and I just, having owned it for a year now, like I will never go back to the days where like you're in the waiting room at the mechanic and he's like, "Come back, Mr. George," and then he just gives you this look like he's about to shoot your dog or something. Like, it's not good. It's not good, sir. We did what we could, but it's an interference engine, and you're gonna need to give us a kidney for this. Like, I will not miss those days. Like this, I just rotate the tires and top the wiper fluid with this thing
and cruise off into the sunset. Yeah, that's great.
To go back to values real quick, like these things have dropped dramatically in price, but like I don't know if you can answer this or if this is something that can be answered, but like where is the bottom on EV prices? Is it they just going to be like, we're talking like Mustang Mach-E's for like 15 grand, 10 grand in a year or two? Like, what do you think?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one. I mean, I will say, you're about to lose incentives or the federal tax credit. So, and that was not nothing. So it'll be interesting to see how that levels off, because I would imagine right now you're going to see sort of pent-up demand between now and September 30th when the tax credits expire. And then I would imagine there's going to be a bit of a lull, because anyone who was looking to get an EV or plug-in hybrid or what have you got one. So then, sales are going to kind of tail off for a bit. So I mean, I have to think that logic would argue that prices are going to continue to go down in the used. And like, I have no insights that are telling me that. It's just sort of, it would make sense that as there's a continued supply of EVs entering the used market, they're going to continue to, the prices, there's more supply. So then prices are going to continue to go down. I mean, there's definitely a floor somewhere. But I think, I don't necessarily know that we've hit it yet. It's just, we're in sort of an unstable time with a tax credit expiring, because it's like the next 6 months, maybe 12 months after that, we got to sort of let everything kind of the dust settle and see where sort of natural demand is for a newer used EV.
Any used electric models in particular you're seeing like just great deals on or a lot of demand for? I mean, I can kind of guess what you're going to say, since it's the obvious answer, but I'll let you surprise me possibly.
I don't have the data in front of me. Or are you thinking Nissan Leaf? Is that where? Or
I was honest. No, I kind of figured it would be just like Tesla Model 3s flying off the shelves at like Toyota Corolla prices, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. If I were giving advice to somebody who was into a used Tesla Model 3, I'd definitely urge a little caution, right? Like, Hertz had how many of those in their rental fleet? We've all rented cars. We know how we drive those things, right? Like, it may be electric and may not have all of the wearables and parts of an ICE, but if people hit every pothole in, Detroit, that car's still going to be, or if it's on this charge cycle where it's like continuously fast charged all the time, right? The battery life on that, and I will say, I'll totally concede, the kind of the unknown or the lesser known element of buying a used EV is the battery life, right?
Yeah.
Like mileage is a pretty good proxy on a gas car, an ICE, for the state of that engine. It's not, like you said, not really the same proxy for the state of the battery in an EV, because it depends on how that owner or owners treated it. So I would urge a little caution because, I mean, you can see sub $20,000 Tesla Model 3s. It's like, well, there's a reason it's that cheap, right? If it's too good to be true, it might be too good to be true.
Yeah, it's been driven and charged like it's been stolen
Yeah,
like every day.
right,
Yeah.
right. So like, so that's where I would urge a little caution. And also like early Model 3s, with we remember the built-in
Yeah.
attendants, right? So I wouldn't consider them on the same level of build quality as I would a Nissan Leaf or a Chevy Bolt. They're not as, a Model 3 is cooler, but
Yeah. No,
there's
I
a
mean
trick.
that tracks just with my own experience and yours too. Like the more recent ones at Tesla, they're really dialed in, but like the
Yeah,
early
yeah.
stuff, you see some inconsistencies there.
Yes.
So it's
And I think for the average, maybe, non-enthusiast, it can be a little confusing because all Model 3s kind of look the same, right? For how many years before they made the change. You might not be able to tell without sort of looking into the VIN or, the build date. Like, is this one of an early vintage or is this one later, right?
yeah.
They all,
Is this a 10 special or was this built inside the factory?
right. An indoor cat. Yeah, right.
um, any tools or tricks you'd recommend for somebody looking to figure out battery health on a used car? And I know that Tesla has that built-in tool in their software, which is actually super helpful. But like any other things you're aware of, so people can investigate that.
I mean, there are third-party companies who I think can, plug in and sort of see kind of the battery life or battery, the state of charge. It's trickier. I would say this is where something like a Carfax report might give you some insights. If it has had a lot of owners or if it had, a fleet company, maybe don't do that. But if you see maybe like one owner and it's a 5-year-old car, maybe that person has
Probably fine. If somebody like owned it, like they had a home charger, like they probably didn't fast charge
right.
all the time.
Right. If there's like as much intel on that car as you can get but that could be helpful. Like you said, yeah, especially if they are charging at home, well, that's probably not as fast charging because maybe they're charging overnight. They don't need it. Like, oh, I need 20 miles right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there are some third-party tools, but it is still sort of, it's an opportunity, I think, for, companies to sort of make this more concrete and quantifiable of like, this is the state of this car's battery, moving forward. So yeah, it's tricky.
I'd agree with that. I want to look forward a little bit, but very quickly, any other trends you're seeing with used hybrids at the moment, or even maybe plug-in hybrids too?
Well, people love used hybrids right now. I mean, that's sort of, I was saying that, it's indicative of the used EV market because there's now price parity. But part of that is as EV prices used are coming down, the demand for used hybrids is going up. And that's where they've now met. They're both, I think, was like about $36,500 is the average used.
36.
Yeah, right. Like to me, that's where I'm like,
Wow.
that should be a new car, the average new car price. I'm like, 50 grand is insane. 36 is insane for a used car. So yeah, people are seeing, I think we have hit, this sort of moment where lots of consumers have realized maybe a fully electric vehicle is not for me, but I do still care about fuel economy. I do still care about range of,
Yeah.
dollars in the gas prices. So they're seeing hybrids as sort of a happy medium in the interim. And so, and also automakers are making very compelling EV or hybrids, right? They're not this, weird Generation 2 Prius, right? They look virtually indistinguishable from the fully gas version of that same vehicle. So I think there's a lot of demand there for people. And again, with affordability, people who don't want to step up to 50 grand for a new vehicle, they're like, all right, 36 isn't great, but it gets me a hybrid that's reliable. It's, however many years old, it's still going to last a long time. But
It's less than 50.
It's less than 50, right? Yeah, there's still plenty of demand there.
I mean, do you see this sort of upward pricing trend for the whole market that we've seen the last few years? Is that a permanent shift, do you think? It's just like they kind of realize that, well, people have to own cars in America, and we could just squeeze people out to 7, 8, 9, 10-year car loans because they have to. Like, is this market going to cool off and regain some sanity at some point?
Well, I don't know. I don't mean to sound like a pessimist. I feel like the genie's out of the bottle, right? Especially in the era of EV tax credits are going away.
Yeah.
Tariffs are really about to start pushing prices slightly higher. Used car demand is still pretty high, and yet there's some supply issues for, like I said, 3 to 4 year old used cars. None of that's going to make cars cheaper. So And I think another thing is, as automakers are looking at their lineup and they're looking at which cars they can sort of bake into the pricing a little bit more, some of the tariff increases, they're going to do that more on higher trim vehicles and then their higher end vehicles, right? Because those are less price sensitive. You can add $3,000 to a Cadillac Escalade much easier than you can, a cheap Chevy. So that's not going to help, right? I think you're going to see just higher trim vehicles become more common. I mean, that was sort of like during the chip shortage. So, automakers looking around of like, well, we can only build X percentage of our capacity. Let's build the ones we're making the most money on. Those are the high content models. I would imagine you're going to see a little bit of that in reaction to tariffs too. So, that's why, I'm saying, like, look, if you are on a 6 month, maybe even 12-month horizon of needing a new or used vehicle, go sooner rather than later. They're not going to get any cheaper than they are right now.
Speaking of this, like, tariff heavy post-tax credits environment that we're going into, where do you see the new EV market going? Is prices going up? Do you think models that have been announced will be canceled? There was some stuff that I was excited about, like the Kia EV3 or EV4, like made in South Korea. I'm not convinced those will come to the United States, and that's not anything that company has said, to be very clear. But if I was like, I was going to put money on it, like, I don't know now. Like, where do you see this market going in this environment?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It doesn't make it easier for a company like that to bring a small, affordable-ish EV here. I will say this. I think one thing we need to keep in mind, anyone who is a supporter of subsidies or tax credits for EVs, is that these were always intended to be temporary, right?
Yeah.
The tax credit or any sort of subsidy. So yes, maybe the timeline has been shortened and that happened, those are being sunsetted. Is that a word, sunsetted? We're going to make it a word.
It is now. It's a good word.
Yeah.
The sunsetting of.
The sunsetting of. Thank you, English professor. You're seeing the sunsetting of these tax credits. I don't think it's an existential crisis, I guess, for EVs. EVs are going to continue to exist. So if you are sort of anxious about the impact of this decision on the future of EVs, I would say don't be. Maybe frankly, it just sped up something that was going to happen anyway and needed to happen. Automakers want to make the cheapest EV possible. They're not out there. And I think this is just going to sort of speed up that. They were, I don't think, really like, all right, cool, or we're like not going to try to lower costs as much as possible. They've always been trying that. This just puts a little more onus on some of them. I think you will see there are sort of different levels of commitment by automakers. You look at General Motors. I think they're all in, right? General Motors, we were saying earlier, their lineup of Cadillac EVs is phenomenal. They have one in every major segment. That's very robust. And then the Chevy, look at the Equinox and the Blazer and the Silverado. That's not going to change. So so that train has left the station. So this is not going to affect them in terms of like scope moving forward. Ford clearly has already made these decisions before this tax credit was going to be sunsetted. But then you look at someone like Stellantis, which doesn't have two EVs to rub together. Well, they have the Dodge Challenger or Charger or whatever that is very poorly received based largely on its cost.
Yeah.
But if you look sort of holistically, there's not a lot of there. I know there's a Jeep model coming out next year or later this year.
Yeah.
So
there's that one that's the Wagoneer S it seems to be deeply underwhelming.
Yeah, very underwhelming. I've driven that.
Yeah.
That shows you I forgot about it because it was like it just wasn't, the price and the content just didn't match up. It's not resonating with consumers. So I think you do see the automakers who have gone in heavy and have a product portfolio to show for it. They're going to continue as is. You may see some reluctance by Toyota, which is all in on hybrids rather than EVs, and smaller companies, Mazda and Subaru, who are sort of using Toyota, sort of following in their wake. Honda has said, that their EV, the Prologue was based on a GM, right? So like, you do you're going to see this bifurcation, but I don't think, again, it's an existential threat to EVs.
It's a thing we say on this podcast often. It's every company wants their technology to win. And if you've put a lot of resources and thought, engineering into it right now, or you've had success with it right now, you don't want that to win. If you've been tepid or skeptical or you're behind, like this is kind of a good moment for now, right?
Yeah, I'll totally admit Toyota is looking like a genius right now. And I remember years ago before I joined Autolist and CarGurus, I was an automotive reporter. And I remember this was in 2015, 2016, doing stories on like, what is Toyota like? What are you thinking? Why are you not like going in on EVs? And then their company line was then the same as it is now of like, we don't think this is ready. We see like, we've got this hybrid technology. It's industry leading. We're not ready to sort of dovetail away from that. So like they were kind of right, like in to some degree of like
in America,
in America for sure. Good, that's a very good point. So I got to give them credit for sort of reading that, but I still think EVs are inevitable. We're going to get there in terms of it's just the timing is going to be a little delayed, but it's happening.
One theory I've had lately, and this is something that will be music to anyone who believes in like market forces. I do think if you take away the subsidies and there's a really detrimental climate effect, obviously, of getting rid of like fuel economy rules in America. Mm-hmm. However, like I think one net effect of this is the participation trophy era is over, and we saw a lot of really half-assed EV efforts over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And my colleague Tim Levin and I the other day talked to RJ Scaringe for this podcast at Rivian, and he was very blunt about this. He's like, how many EVs below 50 grand are really any good? Like really? And I was like, we could name a couple, like the Hyundai Kia cars. Yeah. Equinox is a great value for what it is. Yeah, right. Obviously Model Y still. There aren't many. And it's like, if this is the future, as you say, and as I believe, these companies aren't just going to get to show up anymore with crap and expect tax credits, right? And they have to get serious or they'll die, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of the late Sergio Marchionne talking about the Fiat 500e, and he like was publicly and explicitly hated that car because like, this is so stupid. I have to build this. I'm losing my shirt on every one of these I sell.
Yeah, but California made them build it. It was like regulations. He's like, please don't buy this thing, but I legally have to, or I'm nailed, and I lose so much money on it.
Exactly, and everyone appreciated Marchionne for his bluntness.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Or like the Honda Fit EV, like you couldn't find it. I was a reporter at the time, and people emailing me like,
in LA, you were in LA, yeah,
and like people were like, I love Hondas, I've owned with them, I love the size of this. It's an EV work, and they literally couldn't find one in the entire state. So yeah, I think that's a good point of like, yes, the era of the compliance car is gone. You better bring it. But I also think, this brings up China, right? Like, how long can a automaker that sells in the U.S. continue to ignore EVs as an investment and as sort of the transportation method of the future when at some point in the next, 5 or 10 years, the Chinese brands are going to figure out a way to get into the U.S. market and into the hands of consumers. And when they do, boy, look out. Because for all I have heard, and I've not been to China and driven them, but they are very compelling. They are the speed with which they are getting better is, Jim Farley has said himself, like, my God, these products are incredible. It is only so long that automakers can ignore the threat that China EVs pose. So do so at your own peril, because you're just going to have to be competitive at some point.
I do agree that, and I think there's some reality where maybe not this president, but a president's like, hey, we have this breakthrough new trade and national security deal with China. We're defrosting, relations in a lot of ways. We're stepping up in these other ways. Oh, and by the way, BYD's building a factory in Ohio. And that's just when like all of these auto executives in America just like go out for cigarettes and never come back.
Or car dealers themselves too. They see that as an existential threat because, and so I think that's, they're fighting tooth and nail to prevent these, direct to consumers. It's less the products available today, and it's more of keeping an eye on the Chinese market. But
here's getting real into the weeds now. Hypothetically, do you think a company like BYD, would they set up a franchise agreement, or would they go direct sales like Rivian, Tesla, the rest?
Ooh, great question. I'm sure they are spending a lot of money on highly paid consultants trying to figure that out. I think the easier way is to set up a franchise model because dealers are well-funded. They are well-organized. If you think of, small towns that maybe don't have a lot of businesses in them, it's probably that they have like one McDonald's and one car dealership, right? So at like the hyper-local level, you've got car dealers, and then they sort of at every level of government, you have dealers who have the ear of their local representatives. They are, and they're well funded, they're well organized, so give them credit. So I would imagine that in lieu of challenging them, it would make more sense to just sort of try to go the franchise route, and get them on board. But then that gets it. I mean, it reminds me of like the 80s, when Honda and Toyota were trying to build plants in the U.S. and, the UAW and all these, there's this sort of very sort of xenophobic sentiment. I feel like you're going to see shades of that potentially, if you don't handle that well. But I think the product is so compelling, the EVs, the technology, that like you can only hold that dam so long before they're going to find their way in the U.S., whether it's messy or not, or whether it's through a franchise model or direct to consumer. It's happening. So it's like, do you get on board with it and sort of recognize it, or do you try to fight it tooth and nail and spend billions of dollars lobbying against it, and then it still happens anyway? I don't know, but it'll be very interesting to watch the next 10 years there.
Yeah, for sure. I guess last question. We're coming up on Labor Day, one of the biggest car buying weekends of the year, and also one of the weirdest car buying years in American history. If somebody's in the market for a clean car and they want a decent deal, new or used, like, what would you advise them to do right now?
Go buy it. Don't wait, right? Like I said, like timing, the time matters. And so, a couple of things, like we were saying earlier, potentially automakers are going to take the transition from 2025 to 2026 as an opportunity to tack on some of those tariff related costs onto the 2026. So especially if you kind of know what vehicle you want and it hasn't materially changed from 2025 to 2026, which is often the case, go now, because not only will you not then incur that higher potentially tariff related cost, but this is a great time to get a deal on a 2025. Dealers are trying to get them off the lot, right? It's last year's model, but if nothing is different and you don't have the tariff costs, great. You could save, I don't know what percentage wise, but go negotiate. That, I would say, you're in a very strong position as a buyer. So go have at it.
Nice. You heard him. Get on CarGurus.com. Go hunt around for those pre-tariff specials. Dave Undercoffler, absolute pleasure having you on. Let's do this again soon, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Now it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down in the EV race this week. Tim, who you got for me?
I have a plus, a rare piece of positive news after that the negative news from Stellantis and Porsche. So this was actually a good one for anybody looking to buy an EV before this September 30th deadline when the EV tax credits all disappear. That was passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that act said it did not apply. The tax credits no longer apply for vehicles acquired after September 30th. And everybody was like, okay, what exactly does it mean to acquire a vehicle? Does that mean I have to literally have it in my possession? Can I just order it and pay for it? The IRS
title it, register it, yeah.
So it was like, who knows?
Put your truck nuts on it, like personalize it in some way. Yeah.
The IRS did not address truck nuts, but it did offer guidance on basically. They have said that now you do not need to take delivery of the car before September 30th. You actually have a little bit of wiggle room. So you need to sign a contract for the car and you need to put down some kind of payment. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. You can pay for put a down payment or do a trade-in, and that counts. And so this means that, like, if you're racing to get one before September 30th, like, take a little bit of a deep breath. You don't have to actually like take possession of that car until potentially afterward, as long as you check these other boxes. So good news for car buyers in the next month.
Yeah, man, for sure. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the lack of a tax credit impacts sales. I mean, I personally, we were talking about the slowdown Porsche's been dealing with. I was going to buy a Taycan Turbo S, but without the tax credit, I got to get a Charger Hellcat instead, obviously. So, I have a plus this week. The fastest EV in the world is now from China. This is the BYD's luxury brand called Yangwang. The Yangwang U9 Track Edition hit 293.5 miles per hour. Dear God. Unseating the Rimac Navara R. We knew EVs are quick 0 to 60, but like that's as fast as some like the top supercars, period. And like when you get to those speeds, like anything over like 280 or whatever, you've like declared war on the laws of physics. So kudos to BYD for winning apparently that war. So yeah, crazy stuff.
What's the fastest you've ever gone in a car, Patrick?
Hilariously, it was last week, or tied for it. I did this test track out in Milton Keynes. I did 155 miles an hour in the Polestar 5. My test driver had a little more courage than I am. He got to 160, and yeah, about a decade ago in a Cadillac CTSV, which still rules, by the way. That thing. I did 155 at Circuit of the Americas. So that's about where I've called it. So like these cats that are doing almost twice that speed. Dear God, like just for the technology, like forget that, like the courage alone. I'm impressed. Tim, how about you? What are we talking? 250, 225, 275?
Oh yeah, not quite 293, 292. That's kind of where I top out. Yeah, and that's where my 2010 Forester kind of starts shaking a little bit at that. So I just decide to dial it back.
Yeah, you got tires to worry about at that speed, so I don't blame you. Makes sense. All right, well, thanks for listening to the Plugged In podcast from Inside EVs. We'll be back next Friday.
Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to the Inside EVs YouTube channel, and check out all our EV coverage at InsideEVs.com. See you next time.